Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about my thoughts on 3.26 Mercenary. So we're now a full month into the league, and honestly, the time has just absolutely flown by. But I have to, unfortunately, move apartments now, so I'm gonna round it up with this video, kind of talk about what I liked, what I disliked. Now, the first thing I noticed right before league start, but also close after, was that there's definitely less players, and the Steam charts do kind of corroborate that. My friends list does corroborate that. Some people that I've seen over the years never skip a league have actually skipped this one or came back later. Some of the YouTube numbers also reflected that, although Twitch numbers were pretty steady to what I'm used to. But in general, a lot of people have been absent, and that's because, I mean, PoE had a monumental run for like 10 to 12 years. Now we didn't have something for a while, which is a shame, but also the staggering thing is just how many people kept playing this league. Player retention was massive, even though there were crazy server issues with me actually having to skip streams and not being able to play the game. And it was a little bit harsher in EU, but it basically hit everybody. So while I think that they kind of let the lightning in the bottle escape that they had for the last 10 years or so by not having anything for a while, if they can actually get back on track and this like 2-month cycle of PoE1, PoE2, PoE1, PoE2 can continue, not only would I be happy as a creator, I would also be super happy as a player. Now let's first talk about the expansion, which brought us 16.5 maps, which are basically tier 16 originator influenced maps, as well as new bosses and a little bit of a new quest line. And I gotta say, tier 16.5s were exactly what I was looking for in PoE1 endgame. I did not like tier 17s, and I realized why a lot more that we now have 16.5s to substitute them. See, before this league, I thought maybe I dislike tier 17s because I just don't want the difficulty or something, because it restricts which builds can do what content. But in reality, it was literally just layouts. I just absolutely hate the layouts of tier 17s. I don't know why they are the way that they are, where there's not a little bit more variety than like these closed corridors all the time where everything hits you. Obviously, it does make the maps a lot harder because there's nowhere to go. For example, for ranged characters, right? If you're a bow character, you're gonna get hit by all the volatiles. Overall, 16.5s and being able to choose what map layout you want to run is huge. And the choosing of the layouts has been probably the biggest revelation to me. I don't even mind a lot of the tier 17 mods. Like volatile cores are annoying, sure, but that's what they're supposed to do. Tentacle fiends, annoying, but guess what? They're a lot less annoying if you can actually like traverse and like sidestep them and whatnot. Same with Awakener's Desolation. All those mods that in tier 17s were just so goddamn annoying are now doable. And yes, I know 16.5s got nerfed mid-league, right? There was a bug where basically whenever you got an 8-mod 16.5 map, you would get only tier 17 modifiers, which gave you a crazy boost to more currency, more maps, more scarabs, and all of that. But even afterwards, I feel good running them. And yes, a lot of the tier 17 maps are still more profitable. For example, just chasing abysses in a line all day. But I don't feel as bad about not doing them anymore, because the difference between how much currency you make from 16.5s to tier 17s is so much smaller than it was with tier 16s and tier 17s. On top of that, actually being able to leverage a good character instead of having this like ginormous character in tier 16s where it like the content is way too easy, also feels great. And back to the layouts, being able to run legions and breaches and actually have them work in tier 16.5s is great, because some of these league mechanics just don't like jive with these terrible layouts, right? Like you can't really do breaches in tier 17s, or not really, which meant that AoE based characters, like for example the Stormcaller that I made, is all of a sudden like a lot more usable again. There's a lot of these fun builds that during the last leagues I made or I wanted to make, but they weren't really applicable to the content most people wanted to run. So I had to pivot or just not make them, or they were just left in the POB. But I feel like this really opens up the end game, and I'm just super excited about this change. And I feel like now there's a lot of strats where it's like, oh, should I go tier 17? Should I go tier 16.5? Maybe tier 17 is a little bit better per map, but 16.5s are faster because your layout is more efficient, and I think that's a great payoff. As for pedals, I never really pressed the button. I did it at the start. It didn't really do anything for me. The new bosses felt like pushovers, although I did have EA Ballista, which was a lot better than I initially thought. So I don't know. The boss fights seemed all right. They weren't very memorable to me. Everything looked great. Maybe once there's Uber bosses or Uber versions of those bosses, I will actually have to learn the mechanics instead of just face tanking stuff, right? So I think that's still up in the air. Crafting wise, memory strands felt extremely OP whenever they were applicable, but also a little bit confusing and not really intuitive. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with that, but that's a lot of PoE1 crafting, right? So maybe that fits right in. If I had to guess though, they will get nerfed in some shape or form, because they seem kind of busted, and a lot of the reason why people didn't use them is because they were so convoluted. Once people learn how they work, I feel like there's going to be a lot more use cases there. Otherwise, the memories that you have where at the end you kind of fight the boss, for me, were kind of like boring. I don't really like having to like basically have to follow the maps, right? Like not being able to choose what map I want to run. Really nitpicky. I didn't really care about it. I just skipped them mostly. Then let's talk about the League mechanic itself outside of the expansion, which was Mercenaries. And honestly, I just loved it. There's very little I have to criticize about it, which will be next section, but I've never really been invested in group play or anything that was like aura, like support, anything like that. I didn't really care about it. I was always a solo player, never really wanted to dive into that because there's a lot of complexity there, right? And it didn't really makes sense for me to invest any time into it, but well, now I have. And it is fascinating. You being the ally of your merc made itemization completely, like, just very interesting. This delicate balance between giving your merc stuff that makes you stronger versus letting him survive, because if you put too much on your merc and he dies, then your build sucks as a whole. It was a very interesting dynamic, and in general, like, it opened up the game wide for me. I can't really think of a single recent league that made me learn so much about PoE and realize just how much I didn't know as this league. On top of that, it made the economy more interesting. There were items that are now viable, like Chaos Binding. Now, if you hover over a heavy belt for a Mage Blood, you also have Chaos Binding. You corrupt it, you maybe get a Aura Corruption or anything like that, and it's actually worth something. Certain, like, Crusader ones, I think, was it? Hunter Daggers, stuff like that. It's a whole new itemization kind of layer that I find very interesting, and we've only really scratched the surface, I think. We haven't even talked about mercs actually being able to do damage, like Rutu's merc that he made, or a lot of the Abyss stackers that I've seen that use Light Poacher, because Light Poacher doesn't lose stacks because your merc can't use the abilities on items but still gets the buffs. Like, a lot of very fascinating things. Or Chinese tech that Jung recently talked about, where you are literally immortal because your merc gives you a certain ability and you can increase skill effect duration, reduce cooldown. Fascinating. Absolutely love it. It is, however, also crazy power creep. If I think about how easy this league was compared to a lot of other PoE1 leagues, I don't think it's just because I was used to PoE2 in between. I think the league was a lot easier than 3.25, 3.24, and everything. Nobody was really complaining about any league starters because the, like, mercs just made every build so goddamn strong. And I think if that goes away, that will be a big gap. We'll see how that goes. I'm currently not sure how they can actually incorporate this into the main game, and I'm not sure they will, but I would love it to stay in the game, but it also doesn't really make any sense because, once again, it is such crazy power. I think we haven't seen this amount of power creep in quite a while, but I also want it to stay. So I'm not sure how they're going to be able to kind of marry that. My only idea, if they don't want to keep the power creep, but they want to keep the itemization for something outside of you, they could merge it with the mappers and settlers, basically dumb it down to, I don't know, you have like 3 mercs that you can gear and they map on their own. And then they wouldn't have to, I don't know, deal with all the power creep for your character and make room for the next power creep that they add, right? Like borrowed power or whatnot. I'm not really sure how that's going to go either way. I really hope they figure out a good way to incorporate this because it's kind of like a thing where I didn't know I wanted it, but now that I have it, I want to keep it. I personally don't feel like having to chase a mercenary was that much of an issue because you could take just a decent one for the time being and then you upgrade over time. It made boss rushing very interesting. I did a lot of boss rushing strats where I went through hundreds and hundreds of mercs in a very short time period, so it made those strats a little bit more viable. And I also didn't mind that their pouch was pretty weak overall, like 4 chaos. And a Scarab here that was like worth 8 chaos, sometimes a divine. I didn't mind. I don't think it was really meant to make currency. So overall, love the league, but let's nitpick a few things that I didn't like. The lack of follow-up patches. There was a lot of talk about how petals would be fixed, and they never really did, which is, I think, unfortunate, and at this point, probably not gonna happen anymore. I didn't really mind too much. Like I said, 16.5s are very fun. I didn't like the idea of petals to begin with, so not having to press them wasn't really a downside for me. Adding buttons is not really something I'm really all that interested in. Mercenary slots were quite restrictive. I was really hoping that would also be in the patch. Only being able to hold 3 at a time, while at the start was okay, after like week 1, I was already like, no. Even 5 would be low at that point, because people have different builds, and even if they swap builds, they maybe don't want to give up their GG merc that they had, because if they ever need it again, they will probably never find it. The second thing I disliked was the Doriani's meta. It made everything very awkward. Doriani's prototype, being able to put that on your merc and him still not dying, being able to tank everything if you put on a Defiance of Destiny or almost anything, was a little bit cheesy. Minus 200 res is kind of ridiculous. It made lightning builds a lot stronger, or stacking lightning damage a lot stronger. It made Admiral interesting, but then again, it just all revolved around Doriani's at the end of the day, which was awkward. I think Doriani's has a downside for a reason. It is absurdly strong, and some of the archetypes that just can't really use it got a lot weaker because of it. This was not something that came out of nowhere either. People were talking about it the whole week before league start, and they usually do add in the patch notes on the bottom, right? Like up to release, there's stuff getting changed over and over and over again. I felt like that was a really big oversight. I don't think it would have been hard to just make it so mercs can't go under 0 res. I don't really see an issue with that. Pretty easy fix. And it's funny to think, because I think even at 0 res, Doriani's would have been very strong. Like, if you think about, for example, being able to be an Inquisitor on a Lightning build wherever you are in the tree, even that is strong, let alone minus 200. And I guess the last nitpick would be Risk Scarabs, which got buffed from 1 modifier to 2 modifiers, and all of a sudden they're OP. Who would have thought? Extra modifiers are very strong because they give you extra quant, extra rarity, more currency, and all that stuff with tier 17 modifiers. During Freesia event, people played them even unnerfed, so I'm not really sure why they really needed a buff, but okay. I think the best bet would be just nerf them back down to 1. They're still decent, but they're not meta-defining, and not everybody has to use them. The problem with Risk for me was that it made some builds pretty much obsolete. Not every build can figure out all these issues. And there's like these weird tech choices that you all of a sudden have to run, like the balance of Terra that I had to use on every build. And then I have to cast Temporal Chains every 10 seconds so I don't get, I don't know, my action speed reduced to 0. It's just kind of annoying, and you almost have to participate in it because it gives you so much upside per map. And Risk Scarabs are also not very rare, so they still stay cheap, and you just threw them into most strats. However, I will say that it didn't annoy me that much because it did make for some interesting build decisions, and it had a lot of pack size, so it was also a lot of fun. Although, like I said, it's just very restrictive. My biggest issue this patch, though, was performance. Performance for me has never been this bad in the game, and I always make spammy builds, so nothing really changed particularly. I think most people had shitty performance. I tried, and I tried everything. So I tried rolling back my drivers. I did like the Vulcan stuff, DX12. I tried basically everything, and it always sucked, at least compared to how it was before. Servers were shit, especially here in EU. I don't know what to say. If there was anything to be annoyed about, it was definitely that. As for my builds, I played this league: EA Ballista, Forbidden Rite Occultist, and then Stormcall Elementalist. I'll quickly do a rundown. EA Ballista was amazing, a lot better than I thought. Before the patch, I was a little bit hesitant to tell people to go for the build because maybe golems will die in high tier content. We didn't know what 16.5s really were, and we didn't know about the new bosses and everything. But after trying it, I mean, it is the best version of EA Ballista that has ever existed. If that means something to you, obviously if you don't like the playstyle, you will never like it. But it was amazing. I can only recommend it. It was a lot better than I advertised it. It was a lot better than I thought it would be. And even if Elementalist will get touched, this build will still stay an absolute force to be reckoned with, so I'm still going to keep updating it. Then I played Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice, which Whispers of Infinity is probably going to get changed. It does not look like this was an intended mechanic where you can actually use Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice Frost on CI builds, but I'm not really sure. Maybe they're going to leave it there, but they're going to completely nerf Frost. If you think, well, maybe that's a little bit too much, right? It was solid, but definitely not crazy. Do remember that this league is balanced around Doriani's in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of builds just get ×3, ×4, ×5 damage from your merc, Once that is gone, Frost doesn't use Dorianis, right? So if you remove Dorianis from the picture, it's pretty ridiculous. So it's probably going to get changed in some way, shape, or form, probably very drastically. And if it doesn't get changed too much, if it just gets like a little bit of a touch, like 30% or something, it might still be viable. Build overall has been great. The Power Char Stacker variant, later on, a lot of you guys obviously transitioned to In-Stacker. What Lance was doing, Jung was doing a more budget version with Poison, right? There was a lot of different ways to play it. Overall, very fun build. Mechanically great skill. You scale ES, so defense as well, also scaling offense. That's always a good recipe for endgame. And at the end, Stormcall, what can I say? Super, super fun. Coiling Whispers made all of these casters just so much more viable. Not really because of the damage. A lot of you guys said that, oh, once Coiling Whispers is gone, these builds aren't going to be that good anymore, which is kind of true. But you also have to remember that losing ring slots on a caster build, especially like power charge related build, is actually quite a big deal, even if you get 225% cost speed. But what will get nerfed is not really the damage, it's more the feel of the build. That's why it felt so good, right? Using Spell Echo, but being so fast that you don't even feel it. Being able to Frost Blink or Lightning Warp around the screen, that was really the sell-off. And Stormcall was kind of like a step up from Frost in terms of clear speed, having like this extremely good single target, over 200 million single target. Once again, getting carried by Dorianis, but being mechanically very strong, having huge AoE. Just overall, it fit perfectly into that kind of niche, and it was a hella fun build at the end to throw most of my currency into. But yeah, that's about all I got. In terms of mood and how I like this patch, I haven't felt this great about gaming in a long time, and sure, you could say this is just because I haven't played PoE 1 for a long time, so I'm kind of getting the boost from that, right? It's kind of like a honeymoon phase all over again. That's all fine and dandy. I don't really ask. Even if it is that way, I've still felt great about this league. Time just flew by. Loved 16.5s, loved Mercs. There is some nitpicks here or there, but overall, I'm just happy that we're back to PoE 1. I really hope that they're kind of thing with every 2 months we're going to get PoE 1, PoE 2, PoE 1, PoE 2 is going to hold up. And if it does, I think that we're going to have a PoE 2 that is, for me, I know a lot of people already enjoy the game, but for me, currently not that enjoyable. I will still stay there and play it every single season. I think we're going to get there, especially after a few changes. You'd be surprised. I looked into the patch notes. A lot of people quit early. A lot of the new patch notes seem like they want to go a little bit more towards PoE 1, give us a little bit more movement speed without the craziness, which I think is exactly the right way to go about it. Add more to endgame. Whenever PoE 2 is ready, I'll be here. And most of my critiques about PoE 2 were also because of a frustration of a lack of PoE 1. Now that we have PoE 1 again, I feel like I have a lot to do while PoE 2 figures out what it wants to be. As for what's next, I'll be playing Torchlight Infinite on for me, it's the 18th of July. Before that, I'll probably talk about the patch notes a little bit. I'll be making a video about the build I'll play, the currency strats, how I usually do it. I'll probably play it until like start of August or so. And start of August, there is a little bit of a gap until Last Epoch, which is on the 21st of August. And PoE 2 is on the 29th of August, which I'm both looking forward to a lot. First, Last Epoch, I want to see if they can push out meaningful content in a pretty fast cycle, right? Like, since they took quite a long time after the release, let's see if they can actually manage that. And PoE 2, I just want to see where it goes. A lot of the last patches that they did and kind of the interviews have made me pretty positive about the outlook. I would say we're probably still a few patches off from the game getting a little bit more enjoyable, at least for what I like to play. But I'll be there, and I cannot wait for what they have in store. And yeah, streams are off for a few days. Once I'm back, you're probably going to see a different background. See how it goes. But yeah, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.